Chen traveled through a desolate world and became the incarnation of Purple Vibrio Star. As a disciple of Jiejiao, he knew that the subsequent divine calamity was aimed at Jiejiao's calculation, so he wanted to help Jiejiao get rid of the fate of being calculated. With his incredible insight, he has come up with new methods of cultivation, including divine powers, spells, formations, and refining tools, as well as refining pills. Chen takes every step as his camp, using his body as a chess piece, surpassing half of the sky. The human race should prosper, assist the human race, become the holy teacher of the human race, plan the world's fortune, achieve the position of Ziwei Emperor, become one of the 4 sovereigns, and protect the people of Jiejiao. Chapter 1. Avatar of Violin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the world of the wilderness, on an unknown fairy mountain. Chen slowly opened his eyes and looked at the surroundings, his expression stunned as he pondered something. As I felt the immense power within my body, I felt a little excited inside. He was originally just an ordinary college student in the 21st century, but he didn't expect to just wake up and travel to this magical world. According to my memory, the world he is currently in is a wasteland world. Yes, it is the world where the golden immortal is not as good as the dog and Tai walks everywhere. In other worlds, ordinary people who want to cultivate and become immortals need to expend energy, even give everything, in order to have a chance to become an immortal. In this vast world where heaven and earth have just opened up and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has filled the entire world, as long as it is not too extravagant, it is basically possible to cultivate a celestial fruit position. If the foundation is even better, there is still a chance to cultivate into Tai Jin Xian and De Luo Jin Xian. And his original heel is also good, transformed by the Purple Vibrio Emperor Star in the sky. If it comes to his roots, he is also one of the best in the world of the wilderness. Thinking of this, Chen also squinted his eyes. According to his memory, the Lich Demon Cataclysm had just passed, and Nuwa had previously achieved the position of a saint through her merit in creating humans. As the human race prospered, the next great calamity of heaven and earth would revolve around the human race, the great apocalypse of deity. And the original master was also a named disciple of the outside sect of the knowledgeable and indiscriminate leader of the Tongtian sect. If we follow the original story, the Jiejiao sect will be calculated by 2 factions in the great apocalypse of the gods, and most of the disciples will die on the list of gods. Chen furrowed his brows lightly, the superior becoming an immortal, and the second becoming a god. After Emperor Honghuang made his 2 disciples become the Haotian god and Queen Mother, the heavenly court has been in a state of shortage of people. As a result, there was a great calamity of enfeoffment, allowing disciples of the 3 religions to serve in the heavenly court. The people of the 3 teachings are all disciples of the sages, who are already carefree immortals. Who wants to be bound by the heavenly court? But even saints cannot avoid the great calamity, and how could those disciples of saints escape from it? Once they are stripped of their top 3 flowers and their souls enter the list of gods, their cultivation speed will plummet, and they will also be bound by the heavenly court. If they do not comply, they will be whipped by the divine whip. In other words, the Fengshen list is a high-end version of the Wanhun banner. Once you become a god, you basically have no future or hope, and can only obey people. But unfortunately, I am also a member of the Truncation sect, belonging to the calculated sect in the apocalypse of the gods. Chen muttered to himself, I must change that future. I will never be on the list of gods. Even if I do, I can only become a saint in my flesh. The difference between becoming a saint with a physical body and being killed and entering the divine list is that even if one is bound by the heavenly court, they can maintain their original cultivation speed and not be too constrained by the heavenly court. Quickly, Chen made a decision that even the saints could not avoid the great apocalypse of the gods, and he could not escape it himself. So we can only rely on our own understanding of the gods, predict what will happen in advance, make profits for ourselves, quickly achieve the position of the great luo fruit, and have the power to protect ourselves in the wilderness. Then comes the matter of enfeoffment of the gods, Suzutuzi, who strives to protect the people of the sect. He already has a good impression of the sect, and he has always liked the teachings of the leader of the Tongtian sect. Although there are many bastards in the sect, there are also many good people, such as Zhao Gongming, Sen Xiaonyang Yang Yang, Jin Ling Xingmu, and so on. If you really make it to the list of gods, then you can be one of the 4 imperial guards, and the Purple Way Emperor is also good. Li Chen's mouth curved slightly. He is already the incarnation of Ziwei, and the position of Ziwei Emperor is very close to him. The key is that the 4 emperors also hold high authority in the heavenly court and are basically not bound by others. However, the throne of Emperor Ziwei was previously held by Boyi Cao, the son of Jichang. If I wanted it, I would have to compete with him. However, it's okay. I am already a disciple of Jiejiao and have an opposing relationship with those who helped explain the teachings of the Shang and Zhou dynasties. I am not afraid of offending Boyi Cao. But Li Chen suddenly looked at him with a bitter smile. Although his footsteps were good, he was the incarnation of Ziwei. However, Emperor Jun and Tai Yi had previously seized the power of the stars in the world, suppressing his growth. It was not until those 2 people fell that he was able to transform. Although he was under the guidance of the Tongtian sect leader, his current strength was only in the realm of Xianxian. Now that he was only tens of thousands of years away from being a deity, he may not be able to cultivate to the golden immortal realm by then. And in the golden immortal realm, in the realm of gods, throwing any magic weapon can kill a piece, which is really a bit hollow. At the moment of concern, a crisp reminder sounded. Congratulations on receiving the world gift. Overwhelming wisdom. Li Chen's eyes lit up and he said, how could someone cross without a golden finger? After some investigation, Li Chen finally found out that his journey to this world was just an accident, and this was compensation from the vast world. After obtaining the golden finger, Li Chen couldn't wait to start his own cultivation. With his eyes closed, Li Chen quickly entered a mysterious state, his mind unusually clear, and the original cultivation methods were quickly understood and integrated. Unconsciously, Li Chen's cultivation rapidly increased. Hundreds of years passed in the blink of an eye, and when Li Chen opened his eyes again, a golden light shot out from them. Li Chen looked at the changes in his body with joy and said excitedly, breakthrough. I am now in the golden fairyland. Li Chen was extremely excited. Originally, it took tens of thousands of years of cultivation, but now it only takes 100 years to break through to the golden immortal realm. In this way, it is not impossible for him to achieve the position of the great Luo fruit before the arrival of the divine seal. Before he could check his physical condition, Li Chen felt a dark cloud gathering above his head. Lei Jie. Li Chen muttered to himself, but his expression did not panic. With a flick of his wrist, a long sword surrounded by starlight appeared in his hand, which was his companion magic weapon. It was a medium-grade innate spiritual treasure. The Purple Vibrio Star sword, which had 24 divine prohibitions from the heavens and belonged to the top-grade innate spiritual treasure. If it weren't for the suppression of Emperor Jun and 1 or 2 innate star gods before, his Purple Vibrio Star sword would likely have been promoted to the highest innate spiritual treasure. After a moment, the thunder disaster above finally condensed, emitting a destructive aura. At the moment of the appearance of the thunderbolt, all living beings within a radius of 10,000 miles were directly suppressed on the ground, looking at the thunderbolt with a fearful expression. If the energy affected one's own side, it would be 10 deaths and no life. 6 or 9 thunder tribulations. Li Chen chuckled lightly. This thunder calamity is also worthy of his purple microstars followers. A loud bang came. A thick blue divine thunder fell from a bucket. Li Chen welcomed him with a sword in his hand, and with one strike, he annihilated the divine thunder. Li Chen sneered, but that's all. It seemed like sensing Li Chen's provocation, and the thunder calamity became even more violent, with a thicker and more powerful deep blue sky thunder thundering heavily than before. Li Chen used his sword moves to block and cut open the thunder that day. The third and fourth thunderstorms have exploded rapidly, coming in impenetrably. Thunder like rainstorm poured down one after another. Those falling blue thunderstorms are like a terrible python, tearing a hole in the sky. The bodies of the creatures who could feel the thunderous and earth-shattering aura in the distance were trembling slightly, except for Li Chen, who rose against the sky, constantly waving his long sword to fight against Jiejiao. Chapter 2. Creation and Preaching. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Li Chen suddenly wielded a sword to seize the power of heaven. A sword aura with a terrifying aura pierced through the sky, with a faint aura of killing emanating from the sword aura, directly penetrating the thunder calamity in the sky and shattering all the calamity clouds. After the thunderbolt was scattered, the nearby creatures breathed a sigh of relief. However, looking back at the sword aura just now, they still felt fear in their hearts and immediately fled, far away from this place of trouble. Li Chen withdrew his long sword and felt that the golden immortal realm had become more stable with his eyes closed. Li Chen sighed a bit regretfully as he retracted the purple star sword from its scabbard. I was born at a bad time and missed the time when the most precious treasures were in the wilderness. Now, in my possession, there is only one accompanying intermediate innate spiritual treasure, as well as some treasures that cannot be brought to the table. But there is still a chance. He still remembers the location of some treasures that have not been found in the world of the wilderness. After retracting the purple star sword, Li Chen also looked at himself and gave him a lot of insights when dealing with the thunder calamity just now. He originally practiced the cultivation method that came with his incarnation, but there were some flaws. After becoming a disciple of the master of the Tongtian sect, he switched to practicing the Shangqing cultivation method. However, after receiving the gift of supernatural enlightenment, he realized that the cultivation method of the Upper Qing dynasty was somewhat uncomfortable with himself. Of course, it was not because the cultivation method of the Upper Qing dynasty was not good. After all, it was a sage's method, far exceeding other cultivation methods in the world. It's just a slight mismatch with him, which will have a slight impact on his cultivation speed. There are still 500 years left until the opening ceremony of the Tongtian sect, and I will use this time to improve my cultivation method, Li Chen said to himself. As soon as he thought of it, Li Chen immediately sat cross-legged and began to comprehend and practice. Li Chen also did not intend to create a new cultivation method out of thin air, as it would be too difficult. Therefore, he planned to integrate his own cultivation method with the Upper Qing cultivation method and create his own unique cultivation method. In the first 100 years, Li Chen has been perfecting his original cultivation method, using it to deduce it to a perfect state in 100 years, and can cultivate it all the way to the quasi-holy state. In the following 200 years, Li Chen continued to comprehend the cultivation method of the Upper Qing dynasty and continuously understood this cultivation method. It has to be said that the sage's method far surpasses his cultivation method, with almost no flaws, and the realm also directly connects to the sage's realm. 100 years later, Li Chen also gained a deeper understanding of the Shangqing cultivation method, and his own realm was promoted from a lower level of the Golden Immortal to a middle level of the Golden Immortal. In the remaining time, Li Chen combined his understanding of the two cultivation methods and integrated them together. With the help of his extraordinary insight, although the process was not easy, he was still pushed forward step by Li Chen. 500 years have passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Li Chen seemed to be surrounded by thousands of stars, and the starlight constantly overflowed from his body. After nearly 100 years, he arrived at a nearby spiritual object and absorbed a trace of the starlight by chance. He immediately opened his spiritual intelligence and embarked on the path of cultivation. Li Chen slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, his eyes seemed to contain all things in the universe, and the starlight was incredibly brilliant in his eyes. Finally deduced. Li Chen said excitedly. The cultivation method he has come to understand is more suitable for his starry cultivation, called observing the sun, moon, and starlight method. The position of the stars in the universe is already in line with the heavenly way, and this method of cultivation can reflect on the position of the stars in the universe and comprehend the heavenly way for cultivation. At night, when the stars are bright, the cultivation speed increases by 100 times. And the day and the night without stars are completely fearless. The sun and moon are already one of the stars, and one can also observe their enlightenment and cultivation, but the speed is slightly slower. At the highest level of cultivation, one can use the power of the universe and stars to cross boundaries and kill enemies. The key is that this cultivation method originates from the cultivation method of the Upper Qing dynasty, so it can also directly connect to the realm of saints. Li Chen grinned. This is the only way for him to practice. After a moment, Li Chen also noticed a slight abnormality in the outside world and swept his divine sense outwards, his expression also showing some surprise. At this moment, a large number of spirit beasts and monsters have already knelt outside, some of which have even transformed into human forms, clearly entering the realm of scattered immortals. Li Chen waved his sleeve and used the power of space to move out, while a large area of spiritual beasts and monsters knelt outside. When they saw a handsome man wearing a starry embellished Taoist robe come out, their expression was also indescribable excitement. "What are you doing here?" Li Chen asked. "The immortal is above us, and we have all received your blessings, so we are able to unlock our spiritual intelligence and want to worship under your door," said a beautiful fairy transformed from a spirit deer. Li Chen suddenly realized that this was a method of deducing cultivation, which inexplicably gave these spiritual creatures and monsters a chance. But he didn't care either, just waved his hand and said, "I was here to practice enlightenment, and I didn't intend to bestow it on you. But since I was able to activate my spiritual intelligence, that would be your chance." Li Chen continued, "I don't want to establish a sect right now. You guys go." As soon as these words were spoken, all the spirit beasts and monsters below knelt down in a large area. "I hope the immortal has mercy on us. We cannot seek immortality, and immortality is our only hope." Li Chen did not intend to change his mind. Among so many spirit beasts and monsters, there may be some extremely vicious people. If he accepts their cause, he may have to repay the consequences they bring later. This transaction is not worth it at all. "No way," Li Chen refused again. "We plead with the immortal." The spirit beasts and monsters below still knelt and refused to leave. This may be their only chance in this lifetime, and if they don't seize the opportunity, they will regret it for a lifetime. Li Chen frowned lightly and then a thought flashed through his mind. "I can bestow upon you the method of cultivation." Before the words could be finished, the spirit beasts and monsters below were overjoyed and knelt down repeatedly, saying, "Thank you very much, immortal." The cultivation method is the foundation of a sect, and it is surprising that Li Chen can impart it to them. "But I am neither your teacher nor my disciple. If something bad happens in the future, don't bring me up," said Li Chen. "The spirit beasts and monsters below dare not comply, we know. We bear all the consequences ourselves." Li Chen nodded in satisfaction, then closed his eyes slightly and began to deduce using his newly realized, observing the sun, moon, and stars method, as the original. Less than a few seconds had passed, and Li Chen slowly opened his eyes with a hint of a smile on his face. He had already deduced the new cultivation method. That can be considered a rudimentary version of the observing the sun, moon, and stars method, which also relies on the power of stars for cultivation. However, it is not as rebellious as the original version, just slightly stronger than the methods circulating in the current era. Li Chen looked down at the spirit beast and monster kneeling below and said, "The cultivation method I want to pass on to you is called the worshipping the sun, moon, and stars method. This method utilizes the power of the sun, moon, and stars to cultivate. At night, the cultivation speed is faster, the understanding is deeper, and the highest level of cultivation can reach the golden immortal realm." Before Li Chen could finish speaking, the spirit beasts and monsters below kept kowtowing and thanking each other. The heavenly immortal was already an unimaginable existence, and this method could even be cultivated to the realm of the golden immortal. Li Chen no longer elaborated, just waved his sleeve and saw countless starlights floating out, landing on the foreheads of those spiritual beasts and monsters. After the starlight bit by bit merged into their forehead, they all widened their eyes and entered a mysterious state. Among them, several talented individuals broke through in place and became scattered immortals and transformed into adults. A few days later, those spirit beasts and monsters finally woke up and looked at Li Chen with a lot of awe in their eyes. Li Chen also waved his hand and said, "The law has been passed. Please step back and don't forget what you promised me. You need to do more good deeds in the future, otherwise I will encounter you and kill you with your own hands." Obey the words of the immortal. Those spiritual creatures and monsters also wisely retreated. From then on, I saw everywhere in the wilderness, in some hidden corners, some knowledgeable spiritual animals began to bow to the moon and stars in the sky, seemingly engaged in some mysterious practice. Chapter 3. Obtaining the Innate Premium Spirit Treasure. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the spiritual beasts and monsters dispersed, Li Chen also turned his head to look towards the direction of the East Sea, which was where the Bio Palace was located. Now that nearly 1,000 years have passed, it should be time for the teacher to give a lecture, said Li Chen. The sage's preaching involves the rules of the heavenly way and the principles of all things, and he naturally cannot miss it. With his extraordinary insight, perhaps he can learn something from the preaching of the heavenly master, and his background can be greatly enhanced. Li Chen waved his sleeve and put all the personal belongings in the cave into his sleeve. This is a small space magic that can hold things. It is usually used to collect some daily necessities. After collecting his personal belongings, Li Chen headed towards the direction of the East China Sea and headed towards the sky. This immortal mountain cave was something he casually searched for, so naturally it's not a pity. The wasteland is vast, and it takes several months for Li Chen to reach the Bio Palace from here. However, time is already the least valuable thing for him to achieve the goal of becoming a golden immortal and achieving immortality. On the way, when Li Chen used his flying escape technique, he occasionally pondered whether to find a mount or not, so as not to have to personally rush on the road. By the time of the journey to the west, those somewhat arrogant immortals had their own mounts. But now I have to hurry to listen to the sage's preaching, and I don't have time to specifically find a mount. Even if I find it, it may not be as fast as him. Li Chen was distracted and controlling the clouds while practicing. In this vast world, strength is the foundation, and he didn't want to waste any time. As he was driving the clouds over a high mountain, Li Chen's speed suddenly slowed down, and he let out a puzzled voice. Then, Li Chen poured his magic into his eyes, and a golden light shone down on the high mountain below. But how to look at it, that high mountain is just an ordinary mountain range. But Li Chen did not intend to give up. His intuition told him that there must be something special below. That will be his chance. Li Chen narrowed his eyes and used his divine sense to carefully scan the high mountains below. After a moment, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and then his body disappeared instantly. When it reappears, it will be on the summit of that high mountain. Formation. Li Chen lightly touched his hand and sure enough, the next second his hand was bounced away, and his finger was slightly injured. Li Chen didn't care about the injury on his finger. Instead, he was overjoyed. With the innate formation to protect his body, this treasure was definitely not much different. Immediately after, Li Chen released his divine consciousness and covered the entire mountain, starting to use his intelligence to deduce the formation below the mountain. After 3 months of hard work, Li Chen finally found the loophole in this formation. His eyes opened and he said, "The formation is broken." Li Chen held the magic formula in his hand, constantly resolving the divine prohibition on the formation. As Li Chen's movements became faster, a slight flaw appeared in the formation below. Li Chen seized the opportunity and took out the purple star sword to strike. A burst of starlight flashed by. With a loud bang, the golden light of the formation below shattered instantly. Li Chen finally saw the true face of Mount Lu under the formation, with a dazzling golden light below and an imposing aura. Li Chen squinted his eyes and barely looked through the golden light, only to see a golden basin-shaped treasure, as well as a golden copper coin in the basin. Li Chen pinched a magic spell and covered up the vision here before it fell. Otherwise, if the anomaly attracts others, there will inevitably be some competition. If the opponent's strength is weak, it's okay to say. If it's stronger than oneself, then who will spend this treasure in? In the wilderness, there are no rules or morals. Whoever has the biggest fist is the boss. Li Chen fell between the two treasures, and as soon as his fingers touched the golden bowl-shaped treasure, the information about the treasure poured into his mind. After understanding the information, Li Chen couldn't help but show a joyful expression on his face, innate intermediate Lingbao. Jubao Xianpan. His companion magic weapon, the violet star sword, was of the same grade as it, and thus obtained an innate intermediate spiritual treasure. How could he control his joy? However, it is a pity that the Jubao immortal pot does not have any offensive or defensive effect. Its function is more to gather qi for oneself and can also collect incense. Although it doesn't match well with his current self, Li Chen is also very happy to receive a congenital intermediate spiritual treasure. Then, Li Chen also set his gaze on the copper coin in the treasure trove. The treasure in the shape of copper coins in the wilderness. Li Chen muttered to himself, and began to speculate in his heart. After reaching out and touching the treasure, Li Chen couldn't help but be overjoyed, even more pleasantly surprised than when he performed the sun, moon, and stars method. Surprisingly, it's the lost treasure money. Li Chen couldn't even control his joy. Money is a top-notch innate spiritual treasure. Apart from the innate treasure, no treasure can be lost, and it can be said to be a very unreasonable magic weapon. In the later stage of the divine enfeoffment, the scattered immortal Xiao Xing relied on this treasure to accept Xiao Gongming's dragon-binding rope and Ding Hai Pearl, which led to a great defeat in the martial arts. Now that this treasure has arrived in my own hands, it can be said that the future has been changed by myself for a short period of time. However, this lost treasure money is so reckless, and its use is not without a cost. For every lost treasure from the other party, a certain amount of luck must be paid. If the luck is insufficient, one may die on the spot. Thinking of this, Li Chen looked at the treasure trove and couldn't help but curl his lips. So these two treasures are used together. The Jubao basin is responsible for collecting qi, while the Luobao money is used to use those qi and incense, but for some reason, Xiao Xing only got the Luobao money. Li Chen didn't think much and just put the two treasures in his sleeve. Since he had a connection with him, these two treasures would be his own in the future. After scanning with divine awareness and confirming that no treasures were left behind, Li Chen continued to rush towards the East Sea. He had been delayed here for more than 3 months, and if he continued to slow down, he would not be able to catch up with the preaching of the heavenly sect leader. Li Chen increased his speed and rushed towards the Bio Palace on the East Sea with all his might. Shortly after Li Chen left, a man wearing a Taoist robe suddenly looked up and looked in this direction, thousands of miles away. What's going on? My heart suddenly feels empty, Xiao Xing muttered to himself. Originally, he had a sudden idea today to search here and see if there were any treasures of heaven and earth, but now he felt a hint of sadness in his heart, as if his own opportunity had been taken away by someone. Xiao Xing frowned, feeling as suffocating and unable to vent his anger. After drinking a glass of strong liquor, he also left here, intending to go elsewhere to find his chance. Chapter 4. Getting the Attention of Saints. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Li Chen hurried to the Bayou Palace, and by the time he arrived, the preaching had already begun. The leader of the Tongtian sect sat on the cloud platform, and his words spewed out from his mouth, turning into golden lotus flowers. The sky around him was in chaos, and the earth was filled with golden lotus flowers. Strange phenomena such as the four harmonies of auspicious clouds were reborn one after another. And the late arrival of Li Chen also caught the attention of many people present. The sage preached this rare opportunity: how could you still be late? It's okay to be late, but if you leave a bad impression on the sage, the path of cultivation in the future may become even more difficult. Li Chen didn't care about the gazes of those people either. He glanced at the scene and saw the four disciples sitting at the front of the main seat of the Tongtian sect. Duobao Taoist, Jinling Holy Mother, Wudong Holy Mother, and Guiling Holy Mother. They all have a dedicated futon, which is not just a simple magic weapon, but an excellent acquired spiritual treasure that can help those sitting on it better understand the way of heaven and earth. Only saints like Master Tongtian can wield such a large hand. After the four disciples, there were the seven immortals such as the Dark Cloud Immortal and the Golden Hoop Immortal, who also held their own positions. Later on, there were some prominent figures in the outer gate, such as Zhao Gongming, the siblings of Sanshao Nyang, the four saints of Kowloon Island, the 10 heavenly kings of Jiejiao Island, and the later Fire Virtue Star Lord Luo Xian and the Plague Huang God Lvu. After scanning, Li Chen found an open space at the outer disciples' place and sat cross-legged on it. As soon as he settled in, Li Chen quickly entered a state of ecstasy, with an expression on his face. The difficulties he had encountered during his previous practice were also easily resolved in this listening experience, as if someone had pushed aside the obscure and difficult to understand heavenly way and fully displayed it in front of him. The leader of the Tongtian sect, who was sitting on the cloud platform, also noticed a slight abnormality and opened his eyes slightly, looking at Li Chen who had just meditated. He naturally knew that the other party was late. He thought he didn't take this matter to heart, but he didn't expect that the other party had just meditated and entered a state of enlightenment, which made him somewhat happy. The other party's Purple Vibrio Star incarnation was not bad, so he took the other party as his outer disciple at the time. However, he eventually transformed later, and after years of cultivation, he reached the realm of Xianxian. But now, it seems like there is already a golden immortal realm. This little guy seems to have had some incredible opportunity. Then, the leader of the Tongtian sect separated a trace of his mind from Li Chen, corresponding to Li Chen, which made him feel that the explanation of the Tao was more clear. In just a moment, Li Chen's eyes lit up with golden light, and he was surrounded by the sun, moon, and stars, creating an illusion. His realm suddenly broke through from the middle level of the Golden Immortal to the upper level of the Golden Immortal. Li Chen's breakthrough also attracted the attention of many people in the hall, who turned their heads to look at Li Chen's breakthrough during the preaching. Isn't this guy just here? How did he break through? Someone angrily said. Having achieved the Golden Immortal, one can also be considered a character in the wilderness, someone sighed. I should be able to attract the teacher's attention now. This kid is really lucky. It's not that no one breaks through in the sage's preaching, but rather breaking through in preaching is a common occurrence. However, as soon as Li Chen arrived, he quickly entered a state of breakthrough, which made many people present feel jealous. Of course, the commotion of Li Chen's promotion quickly subsided, and everyone's attention was once again focused on the preaching of the Heavenly Master. 300 years have passed in a blink of an eye. The voice of the Heavenly Master also slowly weakened, and everyone woke up from a dreamlike realization. Thank you, teacher, for explaining the way. Everyone stood up and bowed deeply to the leader of the Tongtian sect. The leader of the Tongtian sect also snorted lightly, as a response to them. Then, the leader of the Tongtian sect glanced at the crowd below and said, "Now is the stage of resolving doubts. If you have any confusion during your practice, feel free to ask me. I will explain it one by one later." None of the people below dared to speak up, they were only named disciples from outside. At most, they could only be considered as those who came to attend classes. It is obvious that Master Tongtian's words were not meant to be heard by them. Sure enough, the next second, the Duobao Taoist sitting at the front stood up and asked the leader of the Tongtian sect about some cultivation methods of the Dalai realm. And the other 3 saints also asked about some of the confusion they encountered during their cultivation, and later on, they accompanied the 7 immortals, all expressing their doubts while listening to the Tao to Tongtian. After the 4 disciples and attendants of the 7 immortals asked, the head of the Tongtian sect nodded lightly and then looked out at the location of the outer gate. Zhao Gongming and San Shao, you can also say what confusion you have. The 4 people whose names were called flashed with joy on their faces, stood up and bowed, and also asked about the difficulties they encountered in their cultivation. However, the 4 of them had excellent cultivation, and most of the people present did not understand their questions. But everyone knew it was a rare opportunity, and envious gazes fell on the 4 of them one by one. The head of the Tongtian sect, who sat on the cloud platform, nodded in satisfaction. Although these 4 were not his own disciples, they had extremely high moral and cultivation talents, which made him very satisfied. I am aware of what you said and will mention it in the subsequent sermons. Later, the leader of the Tongtian sect ordered a few more people, all of whom were famous immortals like Luo Xian and Lvu. After some questioning, just as everyone thought the main focus of the Tongtian sect was starting to preach, they saw that the Tongtian sect leader's gaze turned and fell on Li Chen, who was late in meditation at the back. Li Chen, do you have any confusion? Asked the leader of the Tongtian sect. In the past century of preaching, Li Chen has left a good impression on him, so he also wants to give him some advice. Being slightly flattered by the leader of the Tongtian sect, Li Chen also stood up and bowed to the leader. He never expected that the heavenly master would notice him, and even asked him to ask his own confusion. In the outer door, other immortals saw the leader of the Tongtian sect calling out Li Chen, and their envy and jealousy in their eyes could no longer be concealed. Many people gritted their teeth and gritted their teeth. This guy broke through during his preaching and indeed caught the attention of the sage. After getting up, a hint of hesitation flashed in Li Chen's eyes, but he quickly made a decision. Teacher, I want to know the way of formation, said Li Chen. The master of the Tongtian sect is skilled in the way of formation. If it weren't for the help of outsiders called by the Yuanshi Heavenly Lord and Laozi in the later stage of the divine enfeoffment, he wouldn't have been able to break through the 10,000 immortals formation and the immortal punishment formation he had set up. Now that he has this opportunity, he naturally needs to seek some insights and enlightenment on the formation. And he is already an incarnation of stars, and the arrangement of stars in the sky is in line with the way of formation. If he learns the way of formation himself, he will definitely achieve twice the result with half the effort. Maybe in the future, it can become one of my biggest trump cards. Tongtian unexpectedly glanced at Li Chen, with a hint of cherishing talent in his eyes. Great, I will explain the formation next. You need to fully understand it. After the inquiry, the leader of the Tongtian sect began a new round of explanation, and the other disciples also listened attentively. Although it was not specifically taught to them, they could also gain some insights from it. Hundreds of years passed quickly, and Tongtian finally talked about the way of formation. Everyone's spirits suddenly rose, and finally there was something they could understand. Chapter 5. Tongtian Gifts Treasures. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The leader of the Tongtian sect explained the ways of the formation one by one, from shallow to deep. The people below were also fascinated and suddenly enlightened. Some even took out some small objects and set up a small formation to calculate whether their understanding was correct. As time passed, the formation techniques of the Heavenly Master also reached a profound level, and some cultivators with poor qualifications and understanding simply broke away from listening to the teachings. Looking at the others, many of them had left but couldn't leave, so they decided to meditate and practice in their original place. 100 years have passed, and there are only a few people left in the audience who can understand. Towards the end, everyone also opened their eyes and looked around. San Shao, Duobao Daoist, Jingguang Holy Mother, and several heavenly sovereigns in Jiejiao Island are still immersed in the preaching of the Heavenly Master, all of whom are proficient in formations. During the end of the reign of the Heavenly Master, Duobao Taoist was able to preside over the immortal slaying formation for the Tongtian sect, and the 10 heavenly sovereigns of Jiejiao Island were also the members of the 10 absolute formation. The 3 heavenly empress was even more powerful, and the 9 curved yellow river formation he set up cut off the top 3 flowers of many of the 12 golden immortals of the Chen sect. But soon, someone noticed Chen. "Is this guy still listening?" someone muttered in a low voice. This also caught the attention of others, and they all looked at Chen, realizing that he was still focused on listening. It's not just pretending, you want to attract the teacher's attention. In the teaching process, there are naturally many narrow-minded people who are unwilling to believe that Chen's talent and intelligence far surpass theirs. As soon as the words fell, a grand Tao sound came from Chen, who was meditating. The sky was shrouded in sound, and the clouds were born, with auspicious beasts such as unicorns, real dragons, and phoenixes running on their own. Everyone widened their eyes, and it seemed that the other person was still in a special state of enlightenment, surrounded by strange phenomena. "Born with a strange vision, this guy must have come up with something," said a fairy in a jealous tone. Other people's eyes towards Chen also showed a hint of complexity. They had just thought that the other party was pretending to be dead, but they didn't expect that the other party was really different from them. Their talent far exceeded theirs. After the appearance of the illusion, the leader of the Tongtian sect on the cloud platform also realized it and placed a part of his mind here with Chen to help him understand more array techniques. A few days later, the leader of the Tongtian sect slowly stopped, but did not speak. He only looked at Chen, who was still in the midst of enlightenment. It was also difficult for everyone to get up and salute, so they could only look at Chen together, their eyes full of jealousy and envy. The vision slowly dissipated after circling around for several days, and Chen also slowly opened his eyes. In an instant, the Taoist priests he was looking at felt like they were trapped in a vast starry sky. It wasn't until a moment later that he regained consciousness, and a hint of fear added to his eyes when he looked at Chen. "Thank you very much, teacher." Chen's first thing after waking up was to bow to the leader of the Tongtian sect. He had just realized how well the other party had taken care of him during his enlightenment. Master Tongtian waved his hand and said, "That's your chance. Tell me, what formation have you come up with?" Master Tongtian smiled and asked. Chen also bowed again and said, "The name of the formation I have come up with is All Heavens and Stars Formation. Please correct it, teacher." After being polite, Chen also shared the formation he had just learned. His formation was still related to the stars, using the position of the stars in the sky to arrange the formation and the power of the universe stars to trap or kill the opponent. After the introduction was completed, some of the members of the teaching group present did not understand the basic principles of the formation, while some cultivators who were proficient in the formation widened their eyes and looked incredulous. The head of the Tongtian sect, who was sitting on the cloud platform, nodded in satisfaction and said, "Not bad, the key to the formation lies in borrowing power. Your formation relies on the power of the sky and uses the stars in the sky to arrange it for you. You don't even need to choose a specific venue, and the arrangement doesn't require too many steps. Although there are some drawbacks, this formation has surpassed the vast majority of formations." Upon hearing the evaluation of Master Tongtian, everyone looked over in surprise. It was the first time they had seen Master Tongtian's high evaluation of a person. On weekdays, even for the 4 personal disciples of Duobao Taoist, they simply nod their heads to show satisfaction. The leader of the Tongtian sect continued to look at the Duobao Taoist and said, "You also need to learn more from Chen. Don't be arrogant or complacent." The Duobao Taoist immediately arched their hands and said, "I will obey your teacher's orders." After getting up, everyone looked at Chen's position in unison. The other party usually didn't show any signs of talent, but they didn't expect their talent to be so strong. The leader of the Tongtian sect waved his hand and gestured for everyone to sit down. After everyone sat down, the leader of the Tongtian sect also spoke up, "This sermon ends here. 1,000 years later, we, together with the other two sects, will hold a grand competition among the three sections. We hope you can cherish this opportunity, stand out in the competition, and promote the reputation of our sect." After hearing this, everyone stood up again and said, "We must be diligent in our cultivation and promote the reputation of my dedication to teaching." Master Tongtian nodded in satisfaction and continued, "That's great. I still have some spiritual treasures in my hand that I can't use anymore. I'll share them with you so that you won't lose out on the magic treasures in the competition." Upon hearing the words of Master Tongtian, the disciples below all looked up eagerly, hoping to be selected. However, the leader of the Tongtian sect first shouted out to his eldest disciple, Duobao. "My disciple is here." Taoist Duobao immediately stood up. Tongtian chuckled lightly and said, "When you were dividing treasures in Baoyan, you obtained many treasures. You don't like ordinary spiritual treasures anymore. This golden crown is still a rare treasure, so I'll give it to you." Taoist Duobao blushed and bowed, saying, "Thank you, Master. Jin Ling, you have the 4-elephant pagoda for self-defense, but you are missing an attack weapon. This innate top-grade spiritual treasure, the flying gold sword, is bestowed upon you." The Golden Spirit Holy Mother also expressed her gratitude with a joyful expression. Although she had many magical treasures around her, she was missing a treasure of attack and destruction. Then, Tongtian continued to point downwards, and after the 4 disciples and the 7 accompanying immortals all rewarded the treasures, they went to the outer disciples. "Zhao Gongming, this innate top-grade spiritual treasure, the dragon binding rope, is bestowed upon you. Bixiao, this dragon scissor is a treasure for attacking and attacking. You should be careful when using it." After all the disciples with names and surnames in the outer gate finished reciting, everyone felt that the matter was about to end, and many of them looked regretful, feeling that they had not been selected. The next second, the head of the Tongtian sect on the cloud platform turned his gaze back to the location of their outer disciples. Everyone's hearts suddenly lifted, but the head of the Tongtian sect's gaze shifted and ultimately fell on Li Chen. "Li Chen," shouted the leader of the Tongtian sect. Even Li Chen felt somewhat unexpected at this moment. He didn't even expect to receive the treasure from this gift, and after being stunned, he immediately stood up. "Teacher." Master Tongtian looked at Li Chen with satisfaction and said, "Previously, I saw that you were a disciple of Ziwei Star. I thought you were extraordinary and would definitely make a difference. However, after 1,000 years, you are still just a mysterious immortal realm, and I am somewhat disappointed. Until today, you have finally demonstrated your talent and elevated your realm to the golden immortal realm. Being a teacher is very comforting." Li Chen bowed again and said, "I'm worried about the teacher." Chapter 6. End of preaching, deduce hexagram techniques. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You are accompanied by the innate intermediate spiritual treasure, the Purple Vibrio Sword, and there is no shortage of attack and attack methods. The leader of the Tongtian sect said, "Then I will give you the Swallowing Sky Shield. This is an innate intermediate spiritual treasure that can block the sky and the sun, and it is also a good defense weapon." Li Chen's eyes lit up with joy and he thanked him, "Thank you very much, teacher. Who would think there are too many treasures like this, and they are also innate intermediate spiritual treasures." When the treasure was distributed to Li Chen, it was already over, and the leader of the Tongtian sect did not continue to distribute it further. "Alright, that's all for this preaching. After you go back, you need to carefully understand it yourself." After Master Tongtian finished speaking, he stood up and finally said to everyone, "Don't forget the great comparison of the 3 religions in 1,000 years." After speaking, his figure slowly dissipated and disappeared onto the gimbal. And the person in charge of teaching below also bowed deeply to the last virtual shadow he left behind, "I will obey my teacher's orders." After the leader of the Tongtian sect left, the people in the hall used the Tongtian technique and left the Bio Palace. Some immortals who were not in a hurry to leave also found their friends to discuss their insights from listening to the Tao for thousands of years. However, Chen did not have many friends in this lecture, most of whom were nodding acquaintances, so there were not many people to communicate and exchange ideas with. Just as he was about to leave, a deep voice came, "Friend Chen, don't be in such a hurry to leave." Upon hearing someone shout at him, Chen also stopped and looked back in confusion. Then he saw Zhao Gongming walking towards him with an iron whip and a smile on his face. San Shao followed him and walked towards him together. Chen was stunned for a moment, then bowed and said, "Senior brother Gongming." Zhao Gongming is the eldest disciple of the Jiejiao outer sect, and it is not abrupt for him to shout, "Senior brother." Chen, you don't need to be polite, Zhao Gongming continued with a wave of his hand. I didn't notice that there were people like you in the sect before. It was my clumsiness. It shouldn't be too late to come and make friends now. Whether it's worth it or not, I have long wanted to make friends with senior brother Gongming, but I haven't found a suitable opportunity. Chen waved his hand repeatedly and responded. Zhao Gongming was very satisfied with Chen's attitude of being neither humble nor arrogant, because there were many disgusting bastards in it because he taught without discrimination. However, the Chen Taoist friend in front of him was obviously not one of them. Just now, the teacher praised your talent in the field of formation. Zhao Gongming leaned over and introduced, "My three sisters have also specialized in formation research. You can also exchange and discuss on a daily basis." Chen looked behind Zhao Gongming and saw San Shao. San Zhao's face was smooth and flawless, with delicate features and extraordinary temperament, making her one of the most beautiful women in the wilderness. However, Chen didn't look much either. He just glanced at San Shao and nodded, saying, "Hello, senior sisters." The three of them, San Shao and Zhao Gongming, were different from the enthusiastic and outgoing Zhao Gongming. They belonged to the introverted type and nodded lightly as a gesture. As the elder sister, Yun Shao replied, "If you have time somewhere, you can visit Sanxian Island." Upon hearing this, Zhao Gongming also said in a loud voice, "My dojo is in Luofu Cave on Mount Ame. Daoist Chen, if you have time, you must come over and let me treat you well." Chen arched his hand and said, "If you have time, you will definitely visit." Then he continued, "Young brother, I am currently traveling around the world. If I find the cave, I will inform my senior brothers and sisters." Speaking of which, he is still a bit embarrassed. He is not bad at his own pace, and now he is also in the golden immortal realm. He doesn't even have a cave dojo, which is a bit embarrassing. Zhao Gongming didn't care and laughed a few times before continuing to chat with Chen. After chatting for a while, the few people said goodbye to each other and parted ways from the Bio Palace. Chen left the Bio Palace with his tricolor auspicious clouds, but his mind was constantly thinking about what had just happened. "It seems like we need to find a cave," Chen muttered to himself. Even the influential immortals have a Taoist cave, such as Zhao Gongming's Luofu Cave, Guang Qingzi's Taoyuan Cave, and even the Yellow Dragon Immortal, who is ashamed of the 12 Golden Immortals, has a second immortal mountain. No matter what I say, I have to find a dojo for myself. Firstly, it matches my current state as a Golden Immortal and my identity as a member of the sect. Secondly, in the future, other members of the sect who want to find me will not have nowhere to go. Chen scratched his head and said, "However, even the better Taoist fairies and mountains in the wilderness have been occupied by people in advance. It's not easy to find them. I transformed late and couldn't catch up with the scattered Lingbao Immortal Mountain in the early stage of the flood. Now, the opportunity has been plundered by others, leaving only some leftovers and food. It is also difficult for me to find some good Taoist sites with inherent formation hidden. Why not deduce a divination technique that can predict good or bad luck?" Chen suddenly thought that if that divination technique were also deduced, it would be much more convenient for him to use it to find opportunities that were still missing in the cave or the wilderness. Thinking of this, Chen couldn't wait and wanted to quickly deduce the hexagram technique. Divine consciousness swept down and found a spacious and uninhabited place, and Chen fell down. After scanning the surrounding environment, Chen's gaze fell on a blue stone, where giant trees surrounded and obscured the sun in the sky. The surface was very flat, making it a good place for meditation. From his sleeve, he casually took out some worthless Honghuang treasures. Chen just waved his hand casually, and those Honghuang treasures formed a hidden formation with attack and defense around him. If someone were to watch from the side, they would probably be surprised by the formation that Chen casually arranged. We only use materials that can be seen everywhere in the wilderness, and the formations that can be arranged are much better than those arranged with spiritual treasures. Looking at the formation he had set up, Chen nodded in satisfaction. Over the past 1,000 years, he had learned a lot of formation techniques from the leader of the Tongtian sect. Especially in the following century, the leader of the Tongtian sect explained the ways of formation from deep to shallow, one by one, which was like a small stove specially designed for him, making his foundation much better than others. If we really talk about it, my current expertise in formation can also rank high in the wilderness. Sitting cross-legged on the blue stone, Chen casually waved a few branches and placed them in front of him, but he didn't rush to use them. But instead, I first recalled the content of hexagrams in the Taoist teachings of the Upper Qing dynasty, and then combined it with some hexagrams I gained during my travels in the wilderness. After decades of hard work, Chen mastered all the divination techniques. With a few randomly picked wooden roots and branches, he could deduce the good or bad luck and opportunities for the next 10 days. However, this is not over yet. What he wants is to create a hexagram technique, rather than learning other people's hexagrams. Chen continues to deduce based on those hexagram techniques, relying on his rebellious understanding and combining it with the stars in the sky. Nearly 100 years have passed in a blink of an eye, and a strange image of auspicious clouds merging and dragons and phoenixes soaring has emerged around Chen. Several years later, Chen slowly opened his eyes, and a hint of joy flashed in his eyes. He successfully deduced and created his own divination technique. And that divination technique is stronger than any divination technique he has heard or seen. Except for the great calamity of heaven and earth, other small calamities can completely turn misfortune into good. If this hexagram technique were deduced earlier and used some means to block the heavenly mechanism, he might be able to break through the heavenly calamity of the golden immortal and avoid it, or weaken its power. Chapter 7. Burying Treasures and Collecting Mounts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen put away the several abacus sticks in front of him. At first, these abacus sticks were just ordinary wooden roots, but as he continued to use them to train his subordinates, he was also infused with magic and gave birth to some supernatural powers. The surface of divination involves the flow of precious light, although it has not yet touched the category of acquired spiritual treasures. However, if used to deduce divination, there are also some benefits. Chen put it in his sleeve, and when he learned the method of refining tools in the future, he would refine it into a magical treasure for the future. Perhaps he could refine it into a spiritual treasure for avoiding misfortune and good fortune. After getting up, Chen was also attracted by the blue stones beneath him. That huge blue stone has undergone significant changes compared to when I saw it before. Over the past century, it has been infused with the Taoist charm emanating from me. This ordinary bluestone, like that calculating skill, has undergone a leap in quality and become a rare treasure. Chen's divine sense swept away, and the corner of his mouth curled slightly. This bluestone can now be called the Wudao stone. As long as you sit on it, your thinking will become active and your cultivation speed will increase by 100 times. Of course, it will not have much effect on a golden immortal like him. Now, this bluestone is still not a treasure in the wilderness, but if it comes to the Western Journey era in the future, it may attract many cultivation sects to compete. Li Chen did not intend to put it away, but turned his wrist and changed the external formation, hiding this area. Let the destined ones come and pick it up, Li Chen chuckled lightly. The treasure is left for future generations, and this gameplay is quite interesting. By the way, I haven't given this hexagram a name yet, Li Chen said, propping his chin. I came to understand this hexagram in Qingshi, and this hexagram is based on the calculation of the stars. That's what Qingshi astrology is. Taking a rough name, Li Chen walked out of the formation. He had originally intended to leave first, but the next second, he met a strange beast and headed up. That exotic beast has colorful patterns on its body, a tail longer than its body, like a tiger with white fur and black stripes, and 2 long horns on its head. The other party immediately shouted with their hair raised when they saw Li Chen. Zhou Wu. Li Chen's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. Zhou Wu is a kind of divine beast, a benevolent beast. Although it looks like a tiger, it does not eat live animals and has the characteristic of running very fast. After seeing him, the other party did not immediately run away, but instead looked over in a daze. Was it attracted by the fluctuations that emanated from my divination skills? Li Chen guessed. Li Chen walked forward and reached out his hand to touch the other person's head, while Zhou Wu did not leave, but rubbed his head over. Feeling the softness in his hands, Li Chen also smiled. He was missing a mount and originally wanted to search for it when he had time, but unexpectedly, a strange beast came knocking on his door. Li Chen glanced at Zhou Wu and found that his opponent's strength had just reached the heavenly immortal realm. If he had replaced it with other creatures, he would have been able to transform it long ago. However, due to the bloodline of ancient exotic beasts in his body, he had to cultivate it to become a true immortal in order to transform it. Li Chen touched Zhou Wu's head again and asked directly, I am a member of the Jiejiao sect and an external disciple of the Tongtian sect leader. Would you be willing to be my mount? Although the opponent only has a fairyland, they have their own racial talent. If they were to ride on their own, their speed would not be much slower than theirs. Moreover, it is still an ancient exotic beast, which is not inferior to other people's mounts when taken out, and even much better. Upon hearing Li Chen's words, a humanized entanglement flashed on Zhou Wu's face. It has a talent for seeking good fortune and avoiding misfortune, and perceives that staying here will benefit it. However, it has not considered becoming someone else's mount, even if the other party is a saint's disciple, it is somewhat unwilling in its heart. Li Chen continued, I won't treat you like a servant, and if you agree, I will definitely help you break through to the realm of true immortality, so that you can also have your own body and facilitate cultivation. The human form is similar to the body of Pangu, and the state of the body is the most in line with the natural state of heaven and earth. Therefore, in the wilderness, some exotic monsters will transform into humans when they reach a certain level of cultivation, which is convenient for their own cultivation. Li Chen is not talking big either. Although the other party has just reached the heavenly immortal realm, at least he is also a golden immortal. If he personally teaches the other party, if their qualifications are not too poor, breaking through the true immortal is not a big problem. If you don't have time to personally teach yourself and learn the art of alchemy in the future, you can refine an immortal pill that the other party can swallow and directly break through to the realm of true immortality. After all, this is a wilderness. If you are lucky enough, it is not uncommon to eat a strange-looking fruit in the morning and become an immortal in the evening. Upon hearing Li Chen's promise, Zhou Wu was also somewhat moved, but he had not yet made up his mind. Li Chen was not in a hurry either, just waiting quietly on the side. After about a few minutes, Zhou Wu also made up his mind and walked forward, rubbing his head against Li Chen's body, expressing his willingness to obey. Li Chen also smiled and immediately formed a Dharma seal, and when Zhou Wu saw it, he completely opened up his sea of consciousness, leading to a fluorescent core. Li Chen engraved the seal on the core, and the contract between the two was considered completed. The mount can be considered as half a disciple, and in some ways, it is even more intimate than a disciple's relationship. Therefore, this kind of relationship cannot be just a verbal agreement. The seal that Li Chen just pinched can have some control over Zhou Wu, so that he is not afraid of his mount suddenly turning against the enemy while fighting. After the contract was completed, Zhou Wu also bent his hooves down, making it convenient for Li Chen to sit on its back. After Li Chen sat up, he couldn't put it down and rubbed Zhou Wu's head. Then, he took out the few arithmetic pieces from his sleeve and calculated them in his hand before turning his head to look east. Go that way. Li Chen reached out and pointed to the east. He calculated from his calculations that his own dojo and cave had a chance in that direction. Zhou Wu raised his head and let out a long moan, then stepped on his hooves and flew into the air with Li Chen. The speed was so fast that the surrounding scenery instantly became blurred. Feeling the refreshing breeze blowing on his face, Li Chen also softly exclaimed, "Refreshing." Continuing to fly south for decades, Zhou Wu had already left the wasteland with Li Chen and entered the Sea of Wasteland. At this moment, Zhou Wu carried Li Chen and stopped over the Honghuang Sea, while Li Chen picked up his calculation and began to calculate. He could feel that his chance to get closer to the cave of the dojo was getting closer and closer. After a moment, Li Chen put away his calculations and looked towards a direction, his eyes sparkling with light. "Zhou Wu, go over there. That's where we will live from now on." Chapter 8. The Three Demons of the East China Sea. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Li Chen flew over the sea with Zhou Wu, and the waves below were dented by a burst of air pressure. After flying in that direction for dozens of minutes, Li Chen saw an anomaly in the nearby sky, with golden light shining brightly like a golden sun. After arriving, Li Chen also saw other people attracted by the vision. Many cultivators were attracted by the vision, but those below Xianxian, when they approached and saw the surrounding cultivators, they avoided from afar, fearing that future battles would affect them. So there were not many left, and the most eye-catching was a team of 3 monsters. Li Chen scanned them with his heavenly eyes and knew their prototypes, all of which were monsters in the sea. The first one was a dragon, the other was a turtle-shaped creature, and the last female monster was a shark. 3 golden immortals. Li Chen muttered to himself, if we start fighting, we should be able to deal with them ourselves. Seeing Li Chen scrutinizing them, the 3 monsters looked over with a disdainful expression. Then the dragon stood up and said to the island still surrounded by the golden light below, "This treasure land is related to the 3 demons of the East China Sea. Please retreat on your own. This dragon is not simply a mortal incarnation, as if it has the bloodline of the ancient dragon race." With a roar, it also startled many competitors away. Seeing that Li Chen had not retreated, the dragon looked at him again and threatened, "Isn't this Taoist friend trying to seize our chance?" Li Chen chuckled lightly and said, "If a treasure has virtue, it should be kept there. Let's talk about how to seize it. Do Taoist friends not know the origin of our 3 demons in the East China Sea?" "Oh." Li Chen raised his eyebrows, "What do you say? Do you know who the final say in the East China Sea?" Li Chen squinted, "Who's the boss?" The Jiaolong's face flashed with a hint of pride, "That's naturally Longting." Due to the karmic obstacles caused by the Dragon Han cataclysm, the Dragon clan had to bear the karma and guard the 4 seas. The Dragon clan at the level of the Great Luo Golden Immortal were all pulled to guard the underwater Dragon Abyss. However, although the Dragon clan has declined a lot, after all, their family background is rich, and now the land of the 4 seas is under their control, which is not yet the appearance of their decline during the journey to the west. Due to the created obstacles, the Dragon clan found it difficult to walk in the wasteland, and the strong members of the clan had to guard the Dragon Abyss, unable to distinguish too many minds. Therefore, these collateral members of the Dragon clan became one of their means of controlling the 4 seas. So no wonder that dragon had such a proud expression on its face. Li Chen smiled lightly, as if in terms of background, he was not afraid of anyone in the wilderness. "Do you know where I came from?" The Jiaolong's gaze changed, and he sensed a slight abnormality in Li Chen's words. He asked, "What are you doing here?" "I am a disciple of the Tongtian sage and a member of the Jiejiao Middle School," Li Chen replied. As soon as these words were spoken, the three demons on the opposite side widened their eyes in an instant. The dragon clan was also considered a giant in the wilderness, but compared to the sages, they were still far behind. The identity and background of the disciple of the other sage directly overshadowed his own. With such an identity, even in the underwater dragon palace, the dragon king must treat him with respect. They never thought that Li Chen was lying. When the other party dared to speak up and mentioned the name of the saint would feel a sense of empathy. If he impersonated a saint's disciple, he would die without knowing how. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, Jiaolong moved the topic to another place. "What about disciples of sages? Treasures have always been inhabited by those who are capable." Li Chen chuckled lightly and ignored them. Instead, he looked at the illusion below, which had been present for so long and was now about to converge and reveal its true form. Both sides were not in a hurry to take action, and after waiting for several more hours, the golden light below finally dissipated, revealing the true face of the island below. The shape of the island is square like a huge chessboard, shining with a faint golden light under the sunlight. Within the island, countless magical treasures float and surge, and there are also many fairy grass and spirit trees shining in it. This island is obviously a rare Taoist cave. After seeing the full picture of the island, the three demons of the East Sea became even more guarded when they looked at Li Chen. Li Chen glanced at the island below but was not in a hurry to move first, while the three demons on the opposite side started moving first. Jiaolong waved his hand and the Xian turtle and the shark flew forward, blocking Li Chen's path. Jiaolong also shouted on the other side, "Although you are a disciple of the sage's sect, you also need to pay attention to the principle of first come, first served. This immortal mountain island belongs to us." After speaking, Jiaolong took out a trident of a lower-grade spiritual treasure from the space magic weapon and rushed towards the island below first. As long as he lands on the island first, this thing will be considered a possession of the owner, occupying the great righteousness. If Li Chen wants to forcibly seize it, then he is starting from an unknown source. Looking at the other person's impatient expression, Li Chen was not in a hurry either. He continued to sit on Zhou Wu's body, holding his chin and watching the movements of the three demons with a playful expression. Finally, as the dragon approached the Xianshan island below, a golden light emerged from the island, and its innate formation operated, bouncing the opponent hundreds of miles away. Big Brother, the Xian turtle and shark, who were blocking Li Chen's way, turned around and shouted. The dragon that was knocked out quickly flew back, but his face was pale, clearly injured by the formation. "It's okay, just a moment of carelessness. I didn't expect the innate formation on this island to be so strong." Jiaolong waved his hand, letting them not worry about themselves and continue to guard against Li Chen. Then, Jiaolong carefully examined the square island below and occasionally looked towards Li Chen, afraid that Li Chen might fall into the island while he was not prepared. However, Li Chen still looked at them with a playful expression on his face. Even after the illusion dissipated, he could see the innate formation of the Xianshan island below. This innate formation is mainly for defense and operates very complex. If he was not proficient in the formation, he could not break through this formation. Sure enough, after a while, the dragon no longer let the turtle and the shark guard itself, but let them go together, intending to forcefully attack. Fool, all innate formations rely on the power of heaven and earth. With your cultivation as the golden immortal, you want to forcibly break through the formation. Li Chen shook his head and chuckled lightly. Sure enough, a few minutes later, the three demons of the East China Sea were all thrown out by the formation, and the leading dragon spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Watching them being knocked away, Li Chen then drove Zhou Wu forward. "What are you doing?" Jiaolong spat out blood in his mouth and didn't forget to stop Li Chen from saying. "What you just said is that treasures are inhabited by those who are capable. Obviously, all three of you cannot be considered capable, so I have to come. The shark wanted to mock him when he saw this, but was stopped by the dragon and whispered, "Don't, let him go and taste the bitterness." Upon hearing Jiaolong's words, the three demons exchanged a glance and all showed a tacit smile. Then the three demons looked at Li Chen with great anticipation, hoping that he, like the three of them, would be thrown out at the moment of contact with the formation. Kolikin did not see him being rejected by the formation after approaching the Xianshan island below. The three demons were puzzled when they saw Li Chen extend his hand and lightly tap in the void, and then his whole body sank into that formation like water. Chapter 9. Breaking through the innate formation and obtaining the Tao field. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Damn it. Xiangui couldn't help but burst out in foul language, "Big brother, how did he get in?" Jiaolong also had a bewildered expression at this moment. Isn't that right? He shouldn't have been thrown out of the formation like himself. How could he directly enter? This is unreasonable. Jiaolong rubbed his eyes to make sure that the scene in front of him was not an illusion. The shark on one side pondered, he just said he was a disciple of the Tongtian sage, who is also skilled in array techniques. Perhaps he broke through the array and entered the immortal island. Upon hearing the words of the shark, Jiaolong and Xiangui looked up at the distant array, their expressions still somewhat puzzled. That shouldn't be the case. They have also seen some highly skilled cultivators, but it's not that easy to crack an innate formation. You have to sit cross-legged for several days, wait to understand the operation principle of the formation, and then start trying to break it. There's no one like him, just reaching out and lightly tapping on the formation, and then breaking through the formation and walking in. I don't even consider other formation repairs. When the three demons were still outside suspecting the existence of demons, Li Chen had already entered the immortal island. First, with a wave of his hand, he put all kinds of magic weapons and fairy grass flying around the island into his sleeve. Although these things are also innate, they have not reached the level of spiritual treasures. They are just ordinary immortal tools and magical treasures that you may not need, but you can also keep them and reward them to your disciples after receiving them in the future. After collecting the scattered treasures in Xiandao, Li Chen also looked back at the still operating innate formation below Xiandao. Just now, he didn't forcefully break through, but instead took a clever drill in, with the aim of not causing too much damage to this innate formation. Li Chen looked at the running formation and pondered, while also taking out the formation materials that he would use later from his sleeve. That's right, he wants to transform and upgrade the innate formation that comes with this immortal island, making it the protective mountain formation of his own dojo. The innate formation is a formation created by the laws of heaven and earth at the birth of the world. In many aspects, it is much better than the acquired formation arranged by humans. This is also the reason why he didn't forcefully break through the formation just now to get in order to continue using this innate formation and use his understanding of the way of the formation to arrange it more perfectly. Li Chen still focused on Xiandao itself as the main formation after all, this innate formation and Xiandao itself are the most compatible. He also took out 4 useless inferior innate spiritual treasures to suppress the other 4 formation using the 5 elements formation as the basis, allowing the formation to generate and suppress each other, and continuously flowing. Later, Li Chen used various precious materials from the upper flood and wilderness as auxiliary materials, constantly filling them into various parts of the innate formation, filling in the existing defects of this innate formation and making it more diverse. A few hours later, Li Chen's nose also broke out in fine sweat, but a smile appeared on his face. This formation has been almost transformed by him, and now the mountain protection formation is no longer limited to defense, but has added the function of trapping and killing enemies. As long as someone with ulterior motives wants to forcefully break in, they will be trapped in the formation and constantly be worn to death by the metal and fire formations that are the main attacking elements in the 5 elements formation. With Li Chen constantly transforming the formation, the innate formation has become increasingly mysterious and unpredictable. The most intuitive feeling would have to be the three demons from the East China Sea outside the formation. Originally, after seeing Li Chen enter, they still didn't give up and wanted to follow in. Just as Ku mustered up his courage, he saw a sudden change in the formation. Although the three demons were not very familiar with the way of the formation, they could still perceive it intuitively. If I really break into this changed formation now, it's probably not as simple as being hit by a bullet or being slightly injured. Big brother, do you still want to break in? The shark swallowed and asked. She felt that if she broke in now, she would have to skin herself even if she didn't die. Jiaolong's expression was also hesitant. If he couldn't say it, he would lose his share. If he could say it, he was also a bit hesitant. At this moment, Li Chen's voice came out from within the formation. This will be the dojo for Li Chen, the disciple of the outer gate of the Holy One of Heaven, in the future. No one is allowed to approach here without permission. Although Li Chen's words were not very polite, they also gave Jiaolong a step. Tisk, forget it, we have to go to the adult family dojo. Even if we break in like this, we're afraid that some people will say we don't respect the Holy One, so we'll just forget it. Jiaolong made an excuse. The other two demons also nodded in agreement, then picked up the escape light and swept towards the distance. Within the formation, Li Chen also sensed that the three demons had left this place in a gloomy manner. After a light laugh, Li Chen shook his head and waved his hand again, expanding the formation outward, encompassing thousands of miles of nearby seas. If those three demons were still there just now, he wouldn't mind spending more time teaching them a lesson. Now there is a mountain protection formation that has been transformed by oneself. Even if the immortal from the peak of Tai Golden Immortal comes over, he will not be his opponent, let alone three golden immortals. With the operation of the formation, the appearance and aura of the entire immortal island slowly disappeared. Even if you look closer, you can only see a vast white sea, and the entire immortal island is isolated from the desolate world. After finishing all of this, Li Chen nodded in satisfaction. And he also achieved another wish, finding his own dojo. In the future, when others ask where he is, there is no need to awkwardly return and wander around in the wilderness. After the formation had stabilized, Li Chen began to carefully observe his dojo. There are no small islands outside the entire fairy island, just like a chessboard in all directions. The fairy island is filled with spiritual energy, and various types of spiritual herbs and elixirs grow everywhere. In the center of the fairy island, there is a towering mountain peak. Li Chen slowly flew towards the mountain peak, and at the same time, he began to think about the name of his dojo in his heart. Foursquare, wouldn't it be called Foursquare Immortal Island? Li Chen shook his head as he spoke. It doesn't sound too good either. Let's call it Lingtai Immortal Island. Lingtai is also foursquare, and it's also an astronomical observatory, which is quite consistent with himself. After giving his dojo a name, Li Chen's face also showed a happy smile. From now on, I will be the Li Chen Taoist from Lingtai Immortal Island. At this moment, Li Chen also happened to fly to the top of the mountain. As soon as he landed on the ground, he let out a and turned his head to look into a quiet deep place covered in tall trees. There are other treasures on this island, Li Chen said with a slight smile on his lips as he slowly walked towards them. Chapter 10 Obtaining Innate Spiritual Roots. 6 Pure Bamboo Roots. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Li Chen walked forward in the direction of the aura and entered the jungle that covered the sky, making the aura even more pronounced. After walking inside for about a few tens of meters, an emerald green figure finally appeared in front of him. Bitter bamboo. Li Chen widened his eyes and carefully examined, confirming that the emerald green bamboo in front of him was the 6 pure bamboo among the legendary 10 innate spiritual roots. If the storyline of the flood and famine develops, these 6 pure bamboo should have been in the hands of the Zhundi Daoist people, refined into innate spiritual treasures with full power, which can seal people's 6 senses and allow them to be slaughtered. But now it seems like I've had my beard cut off. While Li Chen was carefully examining the innate spiritual root, the bamboo trembled as if encountering a natural enemy. Seeing the trembling bitter bamboo, Li Chen also realized something and opened his divine consciousness and swept over directly. After a moment, there was a hint of enlightenment in his eyes. Sure enough, this bitter bamboo has already given birth to spiritual intelligence, but due to being too rebellious, and now the spiritual concentration of the Honghuang is far lower than that of the early Honghuang after going through the Dragon Han Cataclysm and the Witch Demon Cataclysm, so it has not yet taken shape. No wonder I only noticed his breath when I landed near it. It turned out that after I broke into Lingtai Immortal Island, this bitter bamboo sensed it and hid its breath, but I didn't expect to be discovered by myself. However, if that's the case, then Zhuandi would be a bit cruel, as he has worn away the spirituality of bitter bamboo and refined it into his own magic weapon. Li Chen shook his head and looked at Kuzu, who was still timid, and said, "Don't worry, I won't hurt you." After speaking, Li Chen also felt that the bitter bamboo had relaxed, and he was not as afraid at first. Li Chen smiled. This bitter bamboo is really innocent in nature, and with just a few words, it trusts others. However, he did not have the intention to refine bitter bamboo into a magical treasure. Firstly, he did not know the method of refining tools. Secondly, if he successfully refined it, he might be brought up by that bastard who said, "This thing has a connection with my Western religion," and was forcibly taken away. Thinking of this, Li Chen took out some precious materials from his own pocket and set up a formation below the bitter bamboo. After working hard for a long time and consuming a lot of valuable materials, Li Chen finally completed the formation. "Stand up." Li Chen made a gesture. With the extraction of Li Chen's Dharma technique, the spiritual energy of the entire Lingtai Immortal Island also changed, all rushing towards this side of the formation. Not only the spiritual energy of Lingtai Immortal Island, but also the spiritual energy from tens of thousands of miles outside the island and within the coverage of the mountain protection formation surges in like a siphon. The high concentration of spiritual energy poured in, and the formation shone brilliantly, while the bitter bamboo on top of the formation was crazily absorbing that spiritual energy to nourish itself. The whole process lasted for half a minute before slowly stopping. Li Chen looked at the formation, and the bitter bamboo on the formation shook its branches, expressing friendship and happiness. Li Chen chuckled lightly. The spirit-gathering formation just now was just casually arranged by him. The main function of the formation under the bitter bamboo is to shield the heavenly mystery, so as to avoid Zhuandi being able to deduce that there is a chance of fate with him here. This formation is designed by Li Chen with Kuzu as the eye of the formation. If one only relies on their own formation, it is not enough to block the sage's deduction. However, Kuzu's feet are the top 10 innate spiritual roots, and with the auxiliary effect of the formation, they should be able to avoid the sage's calculation. After finishing all of this, Li Chen finally looked at the bitter bamboo, so that it could also be considered his own. After receiving the benefits from Li Chen, the bitter bamboo also bent down and handed the bamboo rice that had grown from itself to Li Chen. After Li Chen opened his hand, the bitter bamboo shook its body, and hundreds of bamboo grains fell into Li Chen's hands. "Did you give it to me?" Li Chen smiled. The bitter bamboo swayed its body as if nodding. Li Chen took one and tasted it, and his eyes lit up instantly. With just one, his cultivation had greatly increased. However, this bitter bamboo is not like the innate spiritual root of flat peach and ginseng fruit, which are specially used to improve the cultivation of the edible people. Its more role lies in itself, otherwise the would-be Taoist would not refine it into an innate magic weapon instead of leaving it behind. So although this bamboo rice is good, it cannot compare to the innate spiritual roots of peaches that can directly break through the realm after eating, and this is still the amount of walking, so the effect is even worse. However, compared to other fruits produced by ordinary spiritual roots, it is also considered a rare treasure. Li Chen collected all the remaining bamboo and rice, and then said to Kuzu, "Since you have given me something, I will also give you a method of transformation." Li Chen pointed his finger at the center of his eyebrows, leading out a small spot of light. However, this is the method of transformation in the upper Qing Dharma. You are not our disciple, so I cannot just pass it on to you like this, Li Chen said softly. Moreover, the method of transformation in this upper Qing Dharma is similar to the general method of transformation. The better you follow, the higher the requirements for the realm of transformation. Li Chen closed his eyes lightly and began to deduce based on the transformation method in the upper Qing Dharma. Kuzu looked at Li Chen with confusion, not understanding what he was doing. A few days later, Li Chen slowly opened his eyes, revealing a hint of joy. The transformation methods in the upper Qing Dharma have been completely altered by him, and they are just two different sets of transformation methods from the original version. In this way, even if it spreads, it is not a way of venting. Li Chen led the spot of light forward again, making it drift towards the bitter bamboo. Knowing that Li Chen would not harm himself, Kuzu did not resist, allowing the light spot to merge with him. After fusion, Kuzu felt that there was a lot of knowledge in his mind that he had never experienced before, and he immediately fell into a brief state of enlightenment. Li Chen looked at the bitter bamboo that had already been immersed in the method of transformation and chuckled lightly, then said, "Understand well and strive to transform as soon as possible." His skillful transformation method is not to allow the bitter bamboo to transform itself, but to condense into an external form. When the bitter bamboo's cultivation catches up in the future, it will transform. This way, you don't have to be trapped in this small area, and you can also achieve faster cultivation speed in human form, which can be said to kill two birds with one stone. After looking in place for a while and confirming that the cultivation of Kuzu had not gone wrong, Li Chen left with peace of mind. He found a good place on the mountain peak here and started to open up a small and medium-sized cave himself. After the arrangement of the cave was completed, Li Chen took out another cattail and placed it on the ground. He sat on it and began to meditate. In just over 800 years, it will be time for the 3 teachings competition. I need to practice as soon as possible and show my reputation in the competition. Li Chen muttered to himself, in the wilderness, reputation is often equivalent to strength. Only in this way can he have a greater chance to seek the throne of Ziwei, one of the 4 imperial guards, in the future during the great apocalypse of the gods.